In the quiet town of Willow Creek, life moved at a predictable pace. People woke up early, tended to their farms or shops, and gathered in the evening for small talk over coffee. It was an ordinary place where nothing extraordinary ever happened, until one fateful morning. The sky above Willow Creek turned an eerie shade of green as something streaked across it like a falling star. But this wasn't any meteor. It was a spacecraft, its metallic surface gleaming under the sunlight. The object crashed into the nearby woods with a deafening boom that shook the ground beneath everyone's feet. Curious villagers rushed toward the crash site, unsure what they would find. When they arrived, they saw the wreckage of the alien ship embedded deep within the forest floor. Smoke curled lazily from the twisted metal, and strange symbols glowed faintly on its hull. Amidst the debris lay a small figure, a child no older than 6, dressed in tattered robes that shimmered despite being singed by fire. Her large, luminous eyes darted around nervously as she clutched a glowing orb close to her chest. No one knew what to do. Some whispered about calling the authorities, while others suggested leaving her alone altogether. "What if she's dangerous?" muttered Tom, the local mechanic, stepping back cautiously. Others nodded in agreement, fear etched onto their faces. For days, the girl remained near the crash site, huddled among the trees. She didn't speak, not because she couldn't but because no one dared approach her. Food left out by kind-hearted townsfolk went untouched until hunger finally drove her to take it. Even then, she kept her distance, watching them warily from afar. News spread quickly beyond Willow Creek. Scientists, government officials, and even representatives from other countries arrived, eager to study the mysterious visitor. They set up tents and equipment around the perimeter of the woods, scanning the area with advanced technology. Yet none of them stepped forward to claim responsibility for the girl herself. No one wanted the burden, or the risk, of taking care of an alien child. Among those who came to observe was Rachel, a young teacher from a neighboring town. Unlike most visitors, she wasn't there for fame or research grants. Rachel had always been drawn to stories of outsiders finding belonging, perhaps because she'd grown up feeling like an outsider herself. When she first saw the girl peeking through the bushes, her heart broke. "She's just a kid," Rachel muttered to herself, shaking her head. "How can we leave her here?" But when she voiced her concerns to the crowd, she was met with skepticism. "What makes you think you should take her in?" asked Dr. Miller, a stern-looking scientist leading the investigation. "Do you even know what she is capable of?" Rachel hesitated, unsure how to respond. Truthfully, she didn't know anything about aliens or interstellar travel. All she knew was that leaving a frightened child alone in the woods felt wrong. Deep down, though, another question nagged at her: what if the girl really was dangerous? Could she handle such a responsibility? As night fell, Rachel found herself unable to sleep. She sat outside her tent, staring up at the stars. The glowing orb the girl carried caught her attention again. It pulsed softly, almost rhythmically, like a heartbeat. There was something mesmerizing about it, something alive. Rachel made up her mind. If no one else would step forward, she would. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she couldn't stand idly by while a child suffered. The next morning, armed with determination and little else, Rachel ventured into the woods. The girl watched her approach, clutching the orb tighter. For a moment neither moved, they simply stared at each other, two strangers separated by worlds yet connected by circumstance. "Hi," Rachel said softly, crouching down to meet the girl's gaze. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl tilted her head, studying Rachel with those impossibly bright eyes. Then, slowly, she extended the glowing orb toward her. And just like that, everything changed. Rachel's heart raced as she reached out to accept the glowing orb from the alien girl. The moment her fingers brushed its surface, warmth spread through her hand, tingling like a gentle electric current. She pulled back instinctively, startled, but the girl didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head again, studying Rachel with an expression that was equal parts curiosity and caution. "It's okay," Rachel whispered, more to herself than to the child. "I'm here to help." The girl blinked slowly, her luminous eyes softening just a fraction. It wasn't much, but it was enough for Rachel to feel a flicker of hope. Slowly, she extended her hand again, this time letting it hover near the orb without touching it. After a long pause, the girl lowered the object slightly, allowing Rachel to get closer. Over the next few days, Rachel visited the woods regularly, bringing food, water, and blankets. At first, the girl remained wary, retreating deeper into the trees whenever Rachel approached too quickly. But patience paid off. By the fourth day, the girl allowed Rachel to sit beside her, close enough to share the same patch of earth. They communicated through gestures, pointing, nodding, shaking heads, and though words were absent, understanding began to form between them. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Rachel noticed something peculiar about the orb. Its glow shifted colors depending on the girl's mood, soothing blues when she seemed calm, fiery reds when she grew agitated. When Rachel smiled warmly at her, the orb emitted a soft, golden light. It was then that Rachel realized the orb wasn't just some alien artifact. It was tied to the girl in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. Back in Willow Creek, news of Rachel's efforts spread like wildfire. Some admired her courage, others thought she was reckless. Dr. Miller, still leading the investigation, confronted her during one of her visits to town. "You're getting too attached," he warned, his tone sharp. "This isn't some stray puppy you can adopt. We don't know what she is or what she's capable of." "I know exactly what she is," Rachel shot back, surprising even herself with her defiance. "She's a scared little girl who needs someone to care for her. And if none of you are willing to step up, then I will." Dr. Miller opened his mouth to argue but stopped short. There was steel in Rachel's voice, a resolve he hadn't expected. For the first time since arriving, he found himself questioning whether they were doing the right thing by keeping their distance. Despite the skepticism surrounding her, Rachel continued building trust with the girl. One afternoon, while sitting together under the shade of a towering oak tree, Rachel decided to try teaching her basic human words. She pointed to herself and said, "Rachel." Then she gestured toward the girl, waiting patiently. The girl frowned, tilting her head as if puzzled by the concept of names. Finally, after several attempts, she pressed a finger to her chest and made a sound, a melodic hum that resonated like wind chimes. Rachel grinned. "That'll work," she said, nodding enthusiastically. "Your name is Chime." From that day on, the girl responded to the nickname. Though hesitant at first, she gradually warmed to the idea of having a name, repeating it softly whenever Rachel called her. Their bond deepened further when Rachel discovered Chime's unique ability to manipulate light. With a wave of her hand, she could create shimmering patterns in the air, filling the forest with dancing colors. Rachel laughed in wonder, clapping her hands as Chime twirled around, clearly delighted by the reaction. But not everything was light-hearted. As weeks passed, strange occurrences began happening in Willow Creek. Livestock disappeared overnight, crops wilted inexplicably, and eerie lights were spotted hovering over the fields. Rumors swirled that Chime was somehow responsible, fueling fear among the townspeople. Even those who had initially supported Rachel started to waver. "They say she brings bad luck," muttered Mrs. Harper, the baker, when Rachel came to buy bread. "Maybe you should reconsider keeping her so close." Rachel clenched her fists but forced herself to stay calm. "Chime isn't causing these things," she insisted. "If anything, she's protecting us. Haven't you noticed how quiet the woods have been since she arrived? No predators, no accidents, nothing." Mrs. Harper frowned but didn't press the matter further. Still, Rachel could see doubt lingering in her eyes. Determined to prove Chime's innocence, Rachel spent hours observing the strange phenomena plaguing the town. Late one night, she followed a trail of glowing footprints leading away from the edge of the forest. To her astonishment, they led straight to a group of shadowy figures huddled near the riverbank. They weren't human. The creatures stood taller than any man, their elongated limbs casting distorted reflections in the water. Their skin shimmered like oil slicks, and their eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity. Rachel froze, her breath catching in her throat. These weren't friendly visitors, they were hunters. Before she could retreat, one of the creatures turned its gaze directly toward her. Panic surged through her veins, but before it could act, A burst of golden light erupted from behind her. Chime stepped forward, holding the orb aloft, its glow now blinding. The hunters recoiled, hissing angrily before vanishing into the darkness. Rachel collapsed to her knees, trembling. What were those things?" she stammered. Chime knelt beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Her expression was grave, and for the first time, Rachel saw sadness in her eyes. Using gestures and fragments of sounds, Chime tried to explain. Rachel pieced together bits of the story: the crash, the hunters pursuing her, the orb acting as both shield and beacon. "She's running from them," Rachel murmured aloud, realization dawning. "That's why she came here." Chime nodded solemnly, clutching the orb tighter. In that moment, Rachel understood the weight of her decision to protect the girl. This wasn't just about giving a frightened child a home. It was about standing against forces far greater than herself. As dawn broke over Willow Creek, Rachel made a silent vow. Whatever dangers lay ahead, she would face them alongside Chime. Together, they would find a way to keep each other safe. And maybe, just maybe, they'd change the world in the process. The days following the encounter with the hunters were tense. Rachel and Chime stayed close to each other, rarely venturing far from their makeshift home in the woods. The golden orb, which had once seemed like a mysterious trinket, now felt like both a lifeline and a burden. Its glow pulsed faintly even when idle, as if alive and aware of the danger lurking nearby. Rachel spent hours trying to decipher its secrets. She noticed that the orb reacted differently depending on Chime's emotions, brightening during moments of joy, dimming when she was frightened or sad. But there was something else, too, intricate patterns etched into its surface that shifted subtly whenever Chime touched it. It wasn't just an object, it was a key to understanding her origins. One afternoon, while exploring the remains of the crashed spacecraft, Rachel discovered fragments of alien technology scattered among the wreckage. Most of it was beyond comprehension, strange panels covered in glowing symbols, shards of crystalline material that hummed softly, but one piece caught her attention. It was a curved fragment of metal, slightly larger than her palm, engraved with markings identical to those on the orb. "Chime!" Rachel called, holding up the fragment. "Do you recognize this?" Chime approached cautiously, her eyes widening as she examined the piece. She reached out hesitantly, running her fingers over the engravings. A soft chime-like sound echoed through the air, not loud enough to startle, but resonant enough to send shivers down Rachel's spine. Chime nodded vigorously, pointing first at the orb and then at the fragment. "It's connected," Rachel murmured, piecing together the connection. "This must be part of your ship." Chime placed the orb against the fragment, and to Rachel's amazement, they fused seamlessly, forming a single cohesive unit. The combined artifact emitted a steady hum, casting light in swirling patterns across the forest floor. Rachel watched in awe as the symbols began moving, rearranging themselves into shapes that almost resembled letters. "What does it mean?" Rachel asked, though she knew Chime couldn't answer verbally. Still, the girl gestured toward the orb, mimicking the act of opening something. Then she pointed upward, toward the sky. "You're showing me how to activate it," Rachel guessed. Chime nodded eagerly, urging her to try. With trembling hands, Rachel pressed her fingers against the glowing surface. At first, nothing happened. But as she focused, concentrating on the warmth radiating from the orb, the symbols flared brightly, projecting images into the air. They depicted scenes of vast starry skies, towering cities made of shimmering crystal, and beings who looked similar to Chime, tall, graceful, and luminous. But the visions weren't all peaceful. Among them were flashes of destruction, ships exploding, planets crumbling, and creatures like the hunters chasing terrified figures through barren landscapes. Rachel gasped, pulling her hand away instinctively. The projections vanished, leaving only the quiet hum of the orb. Chime placed a comforting hand on Rachel's shoulder, her expression somber. She pointed again at the hunter's images, then at herself, before making a sweeping gesture toward the horizon. "They're after you," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because of what you have, the orb." Chime nodded solemnly. For the first time, Rachel fully grasped the magnitude of the situation. The orb wasn't just a relic from Chime's world, it was a weapon, a treasure, or perhaps both. And whoever controlled it held unimaginable power. Back in Willow Creek, fear continued to grow. The townspeople whispered about strange occurrences, crops wilting overnight, livestock disappearing, and eerie lights hovering over the fields. Though Rachel tried to reassure them that Chime wasn't responsible, suspicion lingered. Some even suggested calling in military forces to deal with the alien threat. "They'll take her away," Rachel muttered to herself late one night, pacing outside her tent. "Or worse." Chime sat quietly nearby, watching her with wide, knowing eyes. She understood the gravity of the situation, even if she couldn't articulate it. Together, they devised a plan. They would leave Willow Creek and head north, where dense forests and remote mountains might offer sanctuary. It was risky, but staying put posed an even greater danger. Before dawn broke, Rachel packed what little supplies they had, wrapping the orb carefully in cloth to conceal its glow. As they prepared to depart, a familiar voice stopped them. "Leaving so soon?" Dr. Miller asked, stepping out of the shadows. He looked tired, his usually pristine lab coat now stained with dirt and ash. "How long have you been spying on us?" Rachel demanded, instinctively stepping between him and Chime. "Long enough to know you're not telling the whole truth," he replied, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Look, I'm not here to hurt either of you. But I need answers. What exactly is that thing she carries? And why are those creatures hunting her?" Rachel hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. But something in his tone, desperation mixed with genuine concern, made her reconsider. "It's more than just an artifact," she admitted finally. "It's tied to her people, her world. And yes, it's powerful. Too powerful for anyone here to handle safely." Dr. Miller nodded slowly, processing her words. "Then let me help you. You can't do this alone." For a moment, Rachel considered refusing. Trusting outsiders had never ended well for her or Chime. Yet deep down, she knew they couldn't outrun the hunters forever. If they stood any chance of surviving, they'd need allies, even reluctant ones like Dr. Miller. "All right," she agreed reluctantly. "But if you betray us, I swear I'll make sure you regret it." A flicker of relief crossed Dr. Miller's face. Fair enough. Their journey north began under the cover of darkness. With Dr. Miller accompanying them, they moved quickly, avoiding main roads and sticking to wooded paths. Along the way, Chime continued to teach Rachel more about the orb's capabilities. She demonstrated how it could create barriers of light to ward off predators, generate heat to keep them warm during cold nights, and even heal minor wounds. Each revelation left Rachel more awestruck, and more determined to protect her young companion. But the hunters weren't easily deterred. One evening, as the group set up camp near a secluded lake, the air grew unnaturally still. The orb's glow intensified, pulsing rapidly as if warning them of impending danger. Chime grabbed Rachel's arm, pointing frantically toward the treeling. "They're here," Rachel breathed, her heart pounding. From the shadows emerged the hunters, their shimmering forms gliding silently across the ground. There were 3 of them this time, their elongated limbs crackling with energy. Their eyes locked onto the orb, glowing with predatory intent. "Stay behind me," Rachel ordered, positioning herself between Chime and the creatures. Dr. Miller fumbled with a handheld device, attempting to scan the hunters, but Rachel barked at him to focus on defense instead. Chime stepped forward, holding the orb aloft. Its light blazed brighter than ever, forcing the hunters to shield their eyes. Taking advantage of the distraction, Rachel grabbed a fallen branch and swung it at the nearest hunter, striking it squarely in the chest. The creature staggered back, hissing in pain, but recovered quickly, lashing out with claw-like appendages. "We can't fight them off forever," Dr. Miller shouted, dodging another attack. "We don't have to," Rachel yelled back. "Chime now!" Chime closed her eyes, focusing intently on the orb. The symbols etched into its surface began spinning wildly, releasing a burst of radiant energy that engulfed the clearing. The hunters screeched in agony, their forms dissolving into tendrils of smoke before vanishing entirely. When the light faded, the forest was silent once more. Rachel collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily, while Dr. Miller stared in stunned disbelief. Chime knelt beside Rachel, her small hand resting gently on her shoulder. "That," Dr. Miller stammered, shaking his head. "That was incredible." Rachel managed a weak smile, though her mind raced with questions. How much power did the orb truly hold? And at what cost? As they resumed their journey, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely postponing the inevitable. The hunters would return, stronger and more determined. And when they did, Rachel knew they'd need more than clever tricks and bursts of light to survive. But for now, they pressed onward, bound by a fragile yet unbreakable bond, one that would shape the fate of worlds. The days following their narrow escape from the hunters were a blur of exhaustion and discovery. Rachel, Chime, and Dr. Miller traveled deeper into the wilderness, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and Willow Creek. The forest grew denser, its towering trees casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. Despite the beauty around them, tension hung heavy in the air. Each step felt like walking on thin ice, fragile and uncertain. Chime carried the orb cradled protectively in her arms, its glow now subdued but still pulsing faintly. Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that it was alive, watching, waiting for something. She often caught herself staring at it, wondering what secrets it held, and what price they might pay for uncovering them. Dr. Miller, too, had become obsessed with understanding the artifact. He spent hours sketching its symbols and comparing them to notes he'd taken during his initial observations of Chime's shipwreck. One evening, as they settled near a small stream to rest, he finally spoke up. "These markings," he said, pointing to one of his drawings, "they're not random. They form patterns, almost like equations or instructions." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Equations? You think this thing is some kind of alien math problem?" He chuckled nervously. "Not exactly. Think of it more like code. If we can decode it, we might figure out how to control the orb, or at least understand its full potential." Chime listened intently, her luminous eyes fixed on Dr. Miller. When he mentioned control, she frowned slightly, shaking her head and making a gentle humming sound. It was clear she didn't approve of tampering with the orb without fully understanding its nature. "She's right," Rachel interjected firmly. "We've already seen what happens when we mess with things we don't understand. Those hunters? That destruction in the visions? We need to be careful." Dr. Miller sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know you're cautious, Rachel, but caution won't save us if those creatures come back. We need answers, and fast." Before Rachel could respond, Chime reached out and touched the orb. Instantly, the symbols began shifting again, projecting images into the air. This time, the scenes were different, vast libraries filled with glowing crystals, intricate machines humming with energy, and beings who resembled Chime working together in harmony. But interspersed among these peaceful depictions were flashes of chaos, explosions, battles, and the same hunters pursuing terrified figures. Rachel watched silently, piecing together fragments of the story. "It looks like your people created the orb," she said softly, turning to Chime. "But something went wrong. Maybe it got out of control, or maybe someone tried to use it for the wrong reasons." Chime nodded solemnly, her expression heavy with sorrow. Then, using gestures and sounds, she conveyed a message. The orb wasn't meant to be used, it was meant to guide. Its power was tied to unity, cooperation, and balance. Misusing it led only to ruin. "Well, that explains why the hunters are after it," Dr. Miller muttered grimly. "If they get their hands on it, they'll use it to destroy everything. And we can't let that happen," Rachel added, her voice firm. "But we also can't keep running forever. We need a plan." Their opportunity came sooner than expected. As they trekked through the mountains, they stumbled upon an abandoned research facility hidden within a rocky valley. The building was old and weathered, its windows shattered and walls covered in moss. Inside, however, they found remnants of advanced technology, human-made equipment designed for studying extraterrestrial phenomena. "This must have been set up decades ago," Dr. Miller mused, examining a dusty console. Probably part of some secret government project. It's perfect, Rachel said, looking around. We can use this place as a base. Study the orb, prepare for whatever comes next. Over the next few days, they transformed the derelict facility into a makeshift laboratory. Dr. Miller worked tirelessly to repair the equipment, while Rachel focused on teaching Chime basic survival skills and reinforcing their bond. For her part, Chime explored the facility curiously, occasionally activating dormant machines with a touch of the orb. The trio quickly fell into a rhythm, united by a shared purpose. But peace never lasts long. One night, as Rachel stood watch outside the facility, she noticed movement in the distance. At first, she thought it was just wildlife, but then she saw it, a faint, shimmering glow moving steadily toward them. Her blood ran cold. Hunters. She rushed inside, waking Dr. Miller and Chime. They're here, she whispered urgently. We need to move. Dr. Miller scrambled to gather their notes and tools, while Chime clutched the orb tightly. Its light pulsed erratically, reacting to the approaching threat. Just as they prepared to flee, the facility's main door burst open, revealing not one but 5 hunters. Their forms crackled with energy, their eyes blazing with malice. We're outnumbered! Dr. Miller shouted, panic creeping into his voice. No, Rachel replied, gripping a piece of metal pipe she'd been using as a makeshift weapon. We fight. Chime stepped forward, holding the orb high. Its light surged, illuminating the entire room. The hunters hesitated, momentarily blinded, but recovered quickly. One lunged at Rachel, its claws slashing through the air. She dodged just in time, swinging the pipe with all her strength. It connected with a sickening crunch, sending the creature stumbling backward. Meanwhile, Dr. Miller frantically activated the repaired equipment, hoping to create some kind of distraction. Sparks flew as he overloaded a nearby generator, causing the lights to flicker wildly. The hunters growled in frustration, their movements becoming less coordinated. Chime, now! Rachel yelled. Chime closed her eyes, focusing every ounce of her willpower on the orb. The symbol spun faster and faster, releasing a blinding wave of energy that engulfed the room. The hunters screamed, their forms dissolving into smoke once again. When the light faded, only silence remained. Rachel sank to her knees, trembling with exhaustion. Dr. Miller leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Chime approached Rachel, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. The orb's glow dimmed, returning to its usual soft pulse. We did it, Rachel whispered hoarsely. For now. But even as relief washed over them, Rachel knew this victory was temporary. The hunters would regroup, stronger and angrier. And there was still so much they didn't know about the orb, or Chime's true role in all of this. As dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Rachel made a silent promise. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she would stand by Chime's side. Together, they would unlock the mysteries of the orb and face whatever dangers awaited them. Because deep down, Rachel believed that the key to saving their world, and perhaps others, lay in the fragile bond they had forged. The days following their second encounter with the hunters passed in a haze of exhaustion and determination. The abandoned research facility became both their sanctuary and their prison, as Rachel, Chime, and Dr. Miller worked tirelessly to uncover more about the orb's origins and purpose. Each revelation brought them closer to understanding its immense power, but also to realizing the danger it posed. Dr. Miller had managed to repair an ancient holographic projector within the facility, which allowed them to delve deeper into the orb's archives. By aligning fragments of the shipwreck they'd salvaged with the orb itself, they unlocked new layers of information. Visions of Chime's homeworld unfolded before their eyes, vast cities suspended in the sky, rivers of liquid light winding through crystalline landscapes, and beings who radiated an inner glow similar to Chime's luminous eyes. But these visions were not idyllic, they were fractured. Scenes of destruction played out repeatedly, wars fought over resources, experiments gone wrong, and the rise of the Hunters, a faction that sought to harness the orb's power for domination. It became clear that the orb wasn't just a tool or weapon, it was a living entity, imbued with the essence of Chime's people. Its creation had united her world once, but greed and ambition had torn it apart. "They're not just hunting you," Dr. Miller said one evening, staring at the glowing projections. "They're hunting it. If they get the orb, they'll try to corrupt it, to turn its power against others." Chime nodded gravely, clutching the orb close. Her expression was one of sorrow and resolve, as if she carried the weight of her entire species on her small shoulders. Rachel watched her closely, feeling a pang of guilt. How could she expect a child to bear such responsibility? "We won't let that happen," Rachel said firmly, placing a reassuring hand on Chime's shoulder. "We'll protect it, and you." As they delved deeper into the orb's secrets, strange things began happening around the facility. At first, it was subtle, objects shifting slightly when no one touched them, whispers echoing in empty rooms, and faint glimmers of light dancing along the walls. But soon, the phenomena grew stronger. One night, while Rachel slept fitfully, she awoke to find the orb hovering above Chime's bed, spinning slowly as if alive. "What's going on?" Rachel whispered, shaking Dr. Miller awake. "I don't know," he replied groggily, rubbing his eyes. "But I think the orb is communicating." "Communicating? With what?" Before he could answer, the ground beneath them trembled violently. The lights flickered, and a low hum filled the air, resonating deep within their bones. Outside, the horizon glowed unnaturally bright, casting eerie shadows across the mountains. Something, or someone, was coming. "It's them again," Rachel muttered, grabbing her makeshift weapon. "How do they keep finding us?" Dr. Miller frowned, examining a readout on one of the consoles. "It's not just them. Look at this energy signature, it's massive. Whatever's approaching, it's bigger than the hunters." Chime stood silently, her gaze fixed on the orb. Its light pulsed rapidly, almost frantically, as if warning them of impending doom. She pointed toward the glowing horizon, then mimicked the act of running. "She wants us to leave," Rachel translated. "Now. But where can we go?" Dr. Miller asked desperately. "If whatever's coming is powerful enough to track us here, there's nowhere safe." Rachel hesitated, her mind racing. Then she turned to Chime. "You've shown us glimpses of your world before. Can you show us somewhere safe, a place to hide until we figure this out?" Chime closed her eyes, focusing intently on the orb. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, the symbols etched into its surface began rearranging themselves, projecting a map-like image into the air. It depicted a network of interconnected pathways leading to a single point, a star-shaped structure nestled within a dense forest. "That must be it," Rachel said, pointing to the structure. "That's our destination." Their journey to the mysterious location was fraught with peril. The unnatural glow on the horizon grew brighter with each passing hour, accompanied by distant rumblings that shook the earth. Along the way, they encountered remnants of the hunters' forces, smaller, less coordinated groups that seemed to be scouting ahead. Chime used the orb to create barriers of light, holding them off long enough for the trio to escape. When they finally reached the forest marked on the orb's map, they found themselves standing before an ancient structure unlike anything they'd ever seen. It resembled a giant starburst carved from translucent crystal, its surface shimmering with iridescent colors. The air around it hummed with energy, and the temperature dropped noticeably as they approached. "This is it," Dr. Miller murmured, awestruck. "A gateway, or maybe a fortress." Chime stepped forward cautiously, holding the orb aloft. As she did, the structure responded, its facets lighting up in sync with the orb's glow. A doorway materialized, revealing a swirling vortex of light and shadow. "It's asking us to enter," Rachel guessed, watching Chime intently. Chime nodded, stepping through the threshold without hesitation. Rachel and Dr. Miller exchanged a glance, then followed her inside. What awaited them on the other side defied comprehension. They emerged into a vast chamber filled with floating platforms, each adorned with glowing runes and intricate carvings. In the center of the room hovered a colossal version of the orb, its light pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. Surrounding it were ghostly figures, projections of Chime's people, their forms flickering faintly as they moved. One figure stepped forward, solidifying into a clearer shape. It was a woman, tall and radiant, with eyes that mirrored Chime's. She spoke in a melodic language, but her words resonated directly in Rachel and Dr. Miller's minds. "Welcome, guardians of the light," she said. "You have brought the shard home." "The shard?" Rachel repeated, confused. "You mean the orb?" The woman nodded. "The orb is a fragment of the core, the heart of our world. Long ago, it was shattered to prevent its misuse. Fragments were scattered across the stars, entrusted to chosen ones like her." She gestured toward Chime. "But now, the fragments are being drawn together once more. The balance teeters on the edge." "What does that mean?" Dr. Miller asked, his voice trembling. "What happens if the fragments reunite? If guided by harmony, they will restore unity and heal the fractures of existence," the woman explained. "But if corrupted by malice, they will unleash devastation beyond imagining." Rachel looked at Chime, whose expression was solemn yet determined. "So it's up to us," Rachel said softly, "to make sure it's guided by harmony." The woman smiled faintly. "Yes. And time is short. The hunters approach, seeking to claim the core for themselves. You must prepare." As the vision faded, the chamber vibrated with urgency. The orb's light intensified, filling the room with warmth and clarity. Rachel felt a surge of resolve wash over her. They had come so far, faced so much. Now, they would face the final challenge, to protect the shard and ensure its power was used for good. For Chime, for her people, and for all worlds connected by the light. The chamber pulsed with an otherworldly energy as Rachel, Chime, and Dr. Miller prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The colossal core orb at the center of the room radiated a steady glow, its light intertwining with the smaller orb Chime carried. It was as if the two fragments recognized each other, yearning to reunite but held apart by the fragile balance of choice. "We don't have much time," Dr. Miller said grimly, checking the readouts on his handheld scanner. "Their energy signatures are converging fast. They'll be here within minutes." Rachel nodded, gripping her makeshift weapon tightly. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from determination. She glanced at Chime, who stood silently beside the core orb, her luminous eyes reflecting both resolve and sorrow. The weight of her people's legacy rested squarely on her small shoulders, yet she bore it without complaint. "Chime," Rachel said gently, kneeling to meet her gaze. "You've shown us how to fight, how to protect. But now you need to show us how to unite. Is there anything else the orb can do, anything we haven't tried yet?" Chime tilted her head thoughtfully, then placed her hand on the core orb. Its light flared brightly, projecting images into the air once more. This time, the visions were different, not battles or destruction, but moments of connection, beings joining hands, sharing knowledge, working together in harmony. At the heart of each scene was the orb, pulsing with radiant energy that bound them all. "She's showing us what true unity looks like," Dr. Miller murmured, awestruck. "Not just among her people, but across worlds." Rachel understood immediately. The orb wasn't meant to be wielded as a weapon, it was meant to inspire collaboration. To heal divisions and bring disparate forces together. If they could channel that power, if they could embody its message, they might stand a chance against the hunters. Before they could act further, the ground shook violently, and the chamber's entrance erupted in a blaze of light. The hunters had arrived. They poured into the chamber like shadows given form, their elongated limbs crackling with dark energy. Their leader, a towering figure with jagged, crystalline protrusions jutting from its body, stepped forward, its glowing eyes fixed on the core orb. Its voice rumbled through the chamber, echoing menacingly. "The shard belongs to us," it growled. "Hand it over, and your lives will be spared." Rachel stepped between the hunters and the core, her weapon raised defiantly. "You'll have to take it from us." The leader sneered, raising a claw-like appendage. "So be it." The battle began in earnest. Rachel lunged at the nearest hunter, striking with ferocity born of desperation. Dr. Miller scrambled to activate defensive systems he'd hastily rigged using the facility's equipment, creating bursts of blinding light to disorient their attackers. Meanwhile, Chime focused entirely on the orb, her hands moving in intricate patterns as she channeled its power. The core orb responded, releasing waves of golden light that pushed back against the hunter's dark energy. Wherever the light touched, the hunters faltered, their forms flickering like static. But they were relentless, regrouping quickly and pressing forward with renewed aggression. One hunter broke through their defenses, lunging straight for Chime. Rachel reacted instinctively, throwing herself into its path. Pain exploded in her side as its claws grazed her, but she gritted her teeth and swung her weapon with every ounce of strength she had left. The hunter staggered, giving Chime enough time to unleash another burst of light from the orb, banishing it completely. Dr. Miller shouted from across the chamber. "Rachel! Look!" She turned to see him standing near one of the floating platforms, which now displayed a swirling image of interconnected pathways, the same network they'd seen earlier in the orb's map. He pointed frantically at a specific point along the pathways, where a cluster of runes glowed brighter than the rest. "That's it!" he yelled. "If we align the shard with those coordinates, we can amplify its power. It'll create a barrier strong enough to repel them." "How do we do that?" Rachel demanded, dodging another attack. "You need to place the shard into the core," Dr. Miller replied. "But someone has to guide the alignment manually. It's too unstable otherwise." "I'll do it," Rachel said without hesitation. "No," Dr. Miller protested. "It's too dangerous. If something goes wrong..." "There's no time to argue," Rachel interrupted, already sprinting toward Chime. "Chime, trust me." Chime hesitated, her grip tightening on the orb. For a moment, Rachel feared she wouldn't let go. Then, slowly, she extended it toward Rachel, her expression a mixture of fear and faith. Taking the orb, Rachel climbed onto the platform where the runes glowed brightest. The hunters redoubled their efforts, sensing the shift in momentum. Dr. Miller fought valiantly to hold them off, wielding a piece of debris as a makeshift shield while shouting encouragement. "Align the symbols," he called out. "Match the pattern." Rachel focused intently on the runes, turning the orb until its symbols synced with those on the platform. As they aligned, the core orb's light intensified, bathing the entire chamber in brilliance. The hunter screamed, recoiling from the overwhelming energy. But the process wasn't complete. A final surge was needed to lock the alignment in place. Rachel braced herself, placing her hands directly onto the core orb. Heat seared through her palms, and for a split second, she felt as though she were being pulled apart and reassembled at the molecular level. Then, with a deafening roar, the core orb unleashed its full power. Golden light erupted outward in a massive wave, engulfing everything in its path. The hunters dissolved instantly, their forms reduced to nothingness. The chamber vibrated with residual energy, the air shimmering like liquid gold. When the light faded, Rachel collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. The core orb floated serenely above the platform, its glow softer now, almost peaceful. Chime ran to Rachel's side, helping her to her feet. Tears streamed down her face, not of sadness, but of relief. "It worked," Dr. Miller whispered, staring at the orb in awe. "You did it." As the dust settled, the trio stood together in silence, absorbing the enormity of what they'd accomplished. The hunters were gone, for now, but Rachel knew this victory came with responsibility. The orb's power was immense, and its potential to unite or destroy rested in the choices made by those who wielded it. "We can't stay here," Rachel said finally. "This place is too exposed. Too important." Dr. Miller nodded. "We'll find a way to safeguard it, to ensure no one abuses its power again." Chime looked up at Rachel, her eyes filled with gratitude and trust. Though she couldn't speak human words, her meaning was clear: "Thank you." Rachel smiled softly, placing a hand on Chime's shoulder. "We're in this together, no matter what comes next." And as they left the chamber, the orb's gentle glow lighting their way, Rachel felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. Together, they had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, not through force, but through unity. For the first time, she truly believed they could change the world.